Well, the Rise News sports reporter Andrew Rosario is here, along with sports journalist Didier Morais. And we've asked you two to come up with a list of the top 5 stories, of course, for the year. So much going on. Let's get right to it. Number 5.
The Tour de France. I mean, what can you say about Vincenzo Nibali from Italy was the first Italian cyclist to win in 16 years. And not only that, but the fact that he won by over 7 minutes, obviously it was a dominant performance, and he dominated the mountain region. Haven't seen a dominant performance like that in a while, and it's especially important given the fact that the history of doping in the
Well, I was about to say performance-enhancing drugs perhaps is not in the picture now.
Well, you know, it'll still be in the picture until, you know, the sport is cleansed totally. But remember, these guys, they race over 2,200 miles.
Right.
I mean, so that's a feat in itself. But again, because of the Lance Armstrong story and everything that followed after that, that's always going to be a backdrop.
Of course, real quickly, the Oscar Pistorius trial took center stage in the legal area as well as sports itself as well.
Right, and you know, that's a sad story. We know what's going on with him and the outcome of that. A lot of people felt that justice wasn't served based on, you know, the conviction and all, and we'll just see how it plays out.
Okay, moving on ahead here, the next one I think captured the attention not just of people here in this country, but worldwide as well. Start off with that, Andrew.
We're talking about the Donald Sterling situation?
No, we're talking about an NFL.
It was such a black eye for the NFL, and so unfortunate. I mean, the beginning of the year, you're coming off the whole bullying scandal, and then you shift over to the Ray Rice situation. And then even then you see how Roger Goodell botched that situation to the point where you're not even sure if you can trust the commissioner of the NFL.
Right.
And then not only that, but you cap it off with Adrian Peterson with the child abuse. And all in all, it was really a black eye for the NFL.
Right,
you're not sure who you can trust.
Right,
I'm
Roger
going to ask you a question with that, though. Do you think that the NFL was held up unfairly and unjustly as the poster child for domestic violence when the incidence of domestic violence in the NFL is far less? I think half of that as the national average in the United States.
I think the big situation there was, again, the release of the videotape. Once that surfaced, I think that just, you know, put the NFL on the map from that standpoint. Now, remember, we have to look at the fact that there have been a lot of players prior to that who have been convicted of vehicular manslaughter in the past, and they had served jail time. They were allowed to come back to the NFL. But because that video was released, especially the second one that showed him viciously abusing his then fiancée, I think that just blew the whole thing out of the water.
Didier, the next story here, I think it just captured the fascination of everybody, and that, of course, was the issue of Donald Sterling and the Clippers.
Absolutely. You're in your own home. He was getting recorded by his mistress, making some racial comments, especially against Irvin Magic Johnson, one of the greatest NBA players we've ever seen. But obviously, Adam Silver, the NBA commissioner, acted deliberately. He banished Donald Sterling from the NBA. Ultimately, he was forced to sell the team to Steve Ballmer for $2 billion. All in all, I mean, players were getting ready to rebel, and at the end of the day, I truly feel that affected the LA Clippers' playoff hopes because this is happening in the middle of a playoff run, and they have to answer these questions. It was a mess altogether, but Adam Silver handled that situation.
And that was the difference between Adam Silver and Roger Goodell.
Absolutely.
Adam Silver came out strict, fast, and decisive, decided that we'd have no part of this, banned him for life, forced him to sell the team, whereas with Commissioner Goodell, again, remember, they reinstated Ray Rice because the arbitrator came out and said that Ray Rice was forthcoming to the commissioner. So my thing was that the minute that Ray Rice said what he did, I would be, all right, Mr. Rice, have a good day. We're going to decide your fate, not just give a 2-game suspension.
The next event, and I call it an event and a spectacle, and it involves sports, but also like a little peppering of there in politics as well, was the Winter Olympics.
Exactly. Yeah, the Sochi Games, the most expensive Olympics in history. Remember, we had the backdrop of Crimea and that situation, the fact that there was terrorist threats, the weather. It was warmer in Russia at that time of the year than it was here in New York City. The snowfall, the man-made snow, they had issues with that. And so there were a lot of issues.
But ultimately, from a sports perspective, there were a lot of nice storylines. I mean, you saw the U.S. with a thrilling shootout victory over Russia with T.J. Yoshi earning some props from President Obama. Ultimately, though, Russia was the one that ended with the most medals.
Right, and there was a little controversy with the women's figure skating because there was a little bit of home, you know, cooking in terms of the judging that allowed the Russian woman to win over the defending champion.
I think you see that in many Olympics. But let's get a drum roll, please,
Okay.
for the #1 story.
The World Cup, of course. It comes once every 4 years. And I mean, the biggest story really from the World Cup was the fact that Brazil unraveled. I mean, it was a storybook. It was a storybook set up for them.
No, I want to put like a
choke sign?
Yeah. I mean, you know, if we keep it real, yes, obviously, because they were the favorites. They have the best young player. They're playing in their home territory. They brought back their old coach who brought them to World Cup glory in 2002. But ultimately, the way they went out, Germany annihilated them 7-1. And then even when it looked like they would at least leave with a third-place medal, they dropped it to the Dutch.
Exactly. And, you know, they're playing at home. They were the host country. And given the fact that I was there, remember we did that one interview, it was fabulous. I mean, the people just embraced the whole games. It was amazing. Now, let's not take away from the U.S. as well, because they were in the group of death. And they weren't expected to make it out, you know, to the knockout round, but they did.
Okay, you know, there's some honorable mentions here. Of course, Derek Jeter, and the way he went out. You know, I mean, Derek Jeter's bat there, you know, driving in the winning run of his last
Couldn't
game.
script it any better.
I mean, my goodness, this guy has had a storybook career.
Hey, remember, when his 3,000th hit was a home run, okay? So, I mean, you cap that. I always say that if it was any other player, you would say he sold his soul to the devil to accomplish what he did, but he's been a natural for all the years that he's with the New York Yankees.
I really would have loved to have ended on a light note like that, but real quickly before we do end here, of course, the ugly specter of racism in sports again. And when it comes to soccer, as we call it here in the United States with football, people throwing bananas on the field, players of color being subjected to that kind of thing. Where are we going now, especially in 2015, guys?
I mean, I feel like there are strides being made, but even you go back to Luis Suarez. I mean, even though the bite wasn't an example of racism, this is a standout soccer player who has been accused of racism in the past and who has been suspended for racist comments. Now, like everything, obviously, FIFA has been making strides to improve, but it's one of those things where you're going to look forward to 2015 and hope that you keep pushing and improving.
Yeah, you know, the popularity of the sport, the passion of the sport, just like across the board in baseball, basketball, football, hockey, you know, soccer, the passion there sometimes just goes a little bit overboard, and then we see incidents like that.
All right, we got a lot to look forward to in 2015. Andrew Rosario, of course, Didier Morais, thank you so much for joining us, and we'll be looking forward to seeing you guys in 2015.
Thank you, Julian.
Just ahead, we'll look back on the movies, music, fashion, and celebs that made headlines this year. And of course, you're watching Arise Rewind 2014.